Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. We are back with yet another episode of our series, Islam and the Modern World. The United States is breaking the world into pieces. Geopolitical blocs, rival ideologies, economic and tech race are the key factors contributing to the divisions. The US-led old order weakens. Its quest for hegemony is misguided and self-destructive. Interventionist foreign and security policy continues to destabilize the world. In the last 4 decades, the US is desperately struggling to heat back any threats to its unipolar hegemony. The US has 750 military bases in at least 80 countries and deeply involves itself in all the world's major conflicts. Its key wars, either in Ukraine, South China Sea, or Middle East, were carried out for the sole purpose of protecting its dying hegemony. US interventionist foreign policy remained the key source of destabilizing the different regions. After a Second World War, for the first time, Europe entered into a war hysteria. It's only because of the US's desire to expand the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, to the doorstep of Russia. European nations once again have restarted their once shut down defense industrial units to counter the external threats rising on the horizon. At the European front, the US dragged Russia into a war and opened the second front against China in South China Sea to counter its economic and technological growth. Washington and its key policymakers believe that wars, conflicts, and interventions against rising powers could be a key to destabilize their declining hegemony. Recently, after the death of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash, the Wall Street Journal editorial board brazenly argued and encouraged the US to intervene and overthrow the Iranian regime. Whereas on the European front, prominent diplomats, including Victoria Nuland, urged the US government to help Ukraine strike inside Russian territory, and surprisingly, Biden announced that he will do just that. American hawkish foreign policy becomes the primary root cause of major geopolitical conflicts. In the last 2 years, since the start of Russia and Ukraine war, Washington has provided more than $55 billion military assistance, whereas its partners in Europe are providing military assistance and bombs. In the previous week, Ukraine has received almost 4.2 billion euros from the European Union as the first payment under the Ukraine facility, a 4-year plan in which the European Union will provide up to 50 billion euros in grants and loans to play a significant role in Ukraine's recovery. This announcement comes after Ukraine's President Zelensky acknowledged the Ukrainian incursion in Russia for the first time. The US and its allies desire to expand the war to Russian cities with the ambition to get Moscow stuck in the war, and Zelensky is doing it for the Americans and receiving dollars and bombs. In contrast, the second front, the Middle East, is getting hotter, where the US is financing Israel's war to carry out genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. To support the war crimes, the US has been providing bombs and financial assistance to Israel. In the recent weeks, first, the Washington has released $3.5 billion to Israel to spend on US-made weapons and military equipment, and later on, the US approved $20 billion in arms sales to Israel. The new $20 billion package will be intended for scores of fighter jets, advanced air-to-air missiles, 50 F-15 fighter jets, and high explosive mortars and tactical devices. Israel's 10-month incursion into Gaza left more than 40,000 people dead since 7th of October. Thousands more are believed to be buried under the rubble. Moreover, in the recent weeks, the United States massively moved their military assets in the Middle East to counter threats from Iran. The Washington's third war, the South China Sea, directed towards China, is also massively financed to keep China at bay and has become a dangerous flashpoint between two powers, where the US backs Taiwan and Philippines, and vows to defend its allies' rights. Following 9/11, the US spent $8 trillion on wars, lost thousands of soldiers. Without Washington's meddling in Ukraine or Middle East, all these deaths and destruction would likely never have occurred. All wars, either in Ukraine, in the Middle East, or South China Sea, only exists to save the drowning hegemony of a superpower. Interventionist policies will continue, and we will see more wars. This is our topic of discussion today, and to discuss this, I'm joined by Dr. Taqir Hussain Sargana in Islamabad studio, Assistant Professor, Department of Politics and International Relations at International Islamic University. Thank you very much, Dr. Taqir, for joining us. With you, we have Ms. Saima Gul Rajput, lecturer, National Defense University, and also doing doctorate in international relations. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have Mufti Imtiaz Hussain joining us from Karachi, who is a research scholar, teaches at APS, and also an associate director of iQuest Islamic Research Institute. Thank you very much for joining us. I think I'll start with Saima, ladies first. So let's talk about the policies which US has had in the past. What is your assessment if you analyze all those policies? Have those interventionist policies failed or succeeded to achieve their stated goals?
Well, if we see in the past when US got independence back in 1783, and we see that it adopted the policy of isolationism. It kept itself away from the, whatever was going on, be it World War I or II, and other things that were going on at that time in the European region. So it adopted that policy, and maybe this is the reason that United States developed at that fast pace. We know, the students of IR know very well that after World War II, we saw that Hiroshima Nagasaki occurred, and America broke into the platform of the world, and with that entry, then we saw the Cold War era, and in that Cold War era, we see there were two distinct blocks in the world. One was the communist bloc, and the other was the US-led bloc. Throughout this Cold War era, we see that there were many interventions led by United States of America. For example, it invaded Vietnam, it invaded Korea, and all that was going on throughout the Cold War period. After Cold War, and even now, we see that US has been engaged in proxy wars and sort of indirect interventions, or maybe the direct ones, but definitely in the name of collective security or through the platform of NATO. So we see that after breaking its isolationist policy, has been actively engaged in different parts of the world, and still we can see in case of Middle East, in case of South China Sea, as you were mentioning, America is quite active in all these areas and in all these conflicts. So I think this is its basic policy, to stay engaged in all these conflicts and all these issues.
And to maintain its global dominance.
Hegemony, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on to Dr. Taqir, how would you compare historical interventions which obviously US has had with recent conflicts, and are there any lessons which US has learned from its failed policies, if any?
Well, geopolitically speaking, when there is no threat, there is no opportunity, and it is very much true in case of United States of America. And very rightly pointed out by Ms. Saadia that the very contestation of United States of America since the very inception of its independent sovereign nation, the policy of isolationism does provide United States of America, a kind of isolation from the center of power at that time, which was Europe. But it remained very much active in the Western Hemisphere, which was the Latin America and other part surrounding its own territory. So it never remained militarily silent on those regions. Rather, it was for the first time in 1825 when United States actually, through Monroe Doctrine, declared that there is a possibility to engage with the Europe expansion towards the Western Hemisphere through military means. But those means were not due to the European-owned political landscapes and changes, they were unable to militarily move forward. So that particular confrontation was avoided. But the Pearl Harbor incident in 1941 actually created a kind of scapegoat for the United States of America to formally enter into Second World War. But even before that, when you see United States' global role in global politics, you have to understand the very DNA of United States of America. It's a country, or it's a nation which has been very much resilient in terms of achieving its geopolitical, geoeconomic and geostrategic interests. Which is why rather than ending up into revenge, it has been formally following a policy of avenging.
Okay.
We can see that in First World War, at the end of First World War, when the then US President Woodrow Wilson was very much active in bringing peace within European countries. And he was very successful in bringing the idea of League of Nations, the predecessor of United Nations. He was very much proactively giving 14 points, and as well as successful in getting a Treaty of Versailles in 1919. But the same spirit of isolationism did not allow even a man like, an idealist like Woodrow Wilson to become part of League of Nations.
Right.
And one of the reasons which have been already proclaimed by so many researchers and scholars that one of the reasons of the failure of League of Nations was United States' absence in that arrangement. So that particular characteristic of United States of America was quite very, they were following proactively during the Second World War, and that's the reason they were successfully able to replace the Great Britain, and they were the primary factor of international governance and politics by becoming an important actor within the framework of United Nations Security Council through veto power and other arrangements. And the so-called allies of the Second World War, which includes the former Soviet Union, the Great Britain, China, the nationalist China of that time, which is actually reflected in Taiwan at the moment. Again, France and US itself. So that ideological difference created another, war, which is normally known as and referred by Saadia as a Cold War. Saima, sorry. So within that framework, that Cold War has led, the creation of two instruments to contain Soviet Union expansion. And one was the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the second one was economic instrument, which was 1948 Marshall Plan. So these two instruments actually intensified the Cold War between the former Soviet Union and the United States of America. But the first contestation which came into that league of competition was Korean War, 1950 to 53, in the Korean Peninsula, and that resulted as two states like North Korea and South Korea. And the second was within the framework of Middle East, which was the Suez Canal crisis of 1956, and then 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. We have seen during 1960s the Vietnam War, and then of course there was a détente period during the 70s, and we saw 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Whereas there could be many other opinions and perspectives whether it was invasion or not, because we know in international law invasion means you're illegally occupying a state, state's territory. But we have some evidences that
indirect
actually
interventions or invasions.
Exactly. It was a kind of mutual consent by the then communist regime of Afghanistan, who invited the Soviet Union militarily, and they were on invitation there. But the literature usually, belongs to the most powerful nations in the world. So they crafted it. It was invasion.
Fulfilled the definition of the criteria.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in international law, I don't think so. It was an invasion, but somehow politically speaking, it has been labeled as invasion. So it was invasion because mostly nations follow that. So that Cold War, created that glorious, momentum within the foreign policy of United States, which provides interventionism, warmongering as a very important fundamental tool for its for the pursuit of national interest in United States foreign policy. And that foreign policy also includes some of the values and norms, which brings democracy and other values as a scapegoat to intervene on the name of humanitarian intervention and some other values.
So I'm glad that you have given a very detailed background of what has been happening, but in short, have those strategies succeeded or failed?
Well, for the powerful, the options and strategies for discussion are for the weakest. For the one who are considered as superpowers or great powers, they provide options to the others rather than they are manipulative and exploitative enough to create their own new options. So I don't feel that those mistakes, even they have done many, could be considered as a reference of a view that United States would be learning a lesson.
No.
Not to repeat those mistakes. They would continue to do so.
They will continue to do so, right? Moving on to Karachi, to Mufti Imtaz Hussain. My question to you is that why no one or no country has been able to stop the United States interventions, especially those interventions which are ethically problematic and also in violation of basic human rights, like affecting the people of Palestine right now?
Assalamu alaikum firstly, and thank you very much for having me here in such an important and very current issue. And I'm very glad to share some of my thoughts regarding the current situation. Firstly, we need to understand that there are ages in the history. Firstly, if we look at the very beginning, there were the age of power. And then after it came the age of knowledge. And now this is the current age that is called the age of technology. When the very first time there was the age of power, at that time the person who had the power, he used that power to manipulate the people. And sometimes he used as a positive manner, and oftenly it has been used very negatively. And we found in the history many people who were there, and like Pharaoh, Qarun, and many other people. And then came the very second age of knowledge, and there came the many thinkers. They thought and they cultivated the world by their knowledge. And now this is the time of technology where we live. And when we are talking about the power, technology and knowledge, now it is very obvious that US has a superpower in all over the world. And being the superpower, it has many things to do. And it has many interventions in other countries. If we look at the very history of this intervention, from 1776 to up to now, approximately 400 times it has been intervened with other countries.
Right.
But no one today in the Muslim Ummah is stopping, because there is no one country, there is no equality, there is no Muslim Ummah is not on a one page.
Right.
When Muslim Ummah is not on a one page, there could be no one to stop US. And when we are talking about the human rights which has been made by the US, but actually those human rights, they are being promoted in today's era very much, but actually these human rights actually have been made by our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam since 1400 years ago. And in his last sermon, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has implemented 10 last point that was totally very super point and very code word for Muslims. So when we have the human rights, when we have the foreign policies, and when we have so many things, but no one is moving forward and no one is stopping these situations. The reason behind this, because Muslims, and we can say that the human beings are not under the one umbrella.
Right.
When Muslims are not under the one umbrella, so there could be no solution.
Right. Ms. Saima, if we talk about the attempts which US is trying to make to stabilize its dominance, so in your view, what are those key strategies which the US is employing right now to maintain that global dominance in the face of rising powers such as China or shifting alliances?
First of all, if we see that as we have seen throughout the Cold War era, that it has engaging different countries, giving them financial or monetary benefits or some developmental funds, and using the techniques of sanctions, etc. Also alliances making, using the platform of NATO and all that. Mufti Saab was talking about how it's impossible or it's difficult to stop US in the given context of Israel-Palestine conflict. So he was mentioning one aspect, that Muslim Ummah is not united, and definitely there are sectarian crises like Sunni Shia and everything going on, Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, Iran conflicts, and overall if we see that Muslim countries in the Arab world are getting incentives from different. So that could be the one reason that we are unable to stop America. There are many other factors, such as the rise of Russia, such as rise of China, that are also involved in Palestine and Israel, that particular Middle Eastern area region. So these are also the factors. Also there are non-state actors which are actively engaged in this, making US unstoppable. So I think these are the other aspects that I would like to add.
And also what we are doing, are we really working on ourselves? Like he mentioned, it's all about technology, it's all about those advancements and innovations these days. We seem to be lagging behind.
I think this is one of the most important reasons. If we see back in 1970, when oil was discovered in the Middle East, and before that they were living in hand to mouth, and they didn't have financial strong base. But after 1970, we saw that it became the bone of contention for all over the world because of that oil, and the controversies after petrodollar and an involvement of many greater powers in the Middle East. Oil was the major reason. So I think if we see the current situation, as you have mentioned, the major reason behind it is that we are dependent on the technologies that we are buying from the Western world, but we are not investing on making our own technology. So we are not, I think, in pace with America in that particular regard.
And on those Western powers, specifically the US, for technical assistance, for military support, financial support.
Yeah, even if you see artificial intelligence, even if we see the information we are gathering from artificial, it is totally biased, because they are controlling the technology, because they are controlling that information base.
Right. On this note, we'll take a break, and when we come back from the break, we'll take questions from the audience here right after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. We are discussing today how the United States is trying to stabilize its declining hegemony or to reinforce its global position, and we are going to take questions from the audience now. First question, yes.
My name is Sufyan Khan Niazi, and I am student of BS Mass Communication at Federal Urdu University. My question is that what could be the best solution of Gaza and Palestine conflict? If we talk about these both countries like Israel and Palestine, they have their own interest. Palestine has their own interest, and on the other hand, Israel has their own interest. So what is the common point where they both can meet, where war can end?
All right, Dr. Taqi, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Sufyan. Actually, first of all, you have to understand that who is who in this conflict. After the collapse of Ottoman Empire in the post-First World War scenario, the Great Britain was the administratively custodian of that territory which is called Palestine, and it is normally referred as mandatory Palestine under the British control. So when this liberal world order was established in 1945, so in 1947, United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 181, and it suggested a partition plan of the Palestine territory. As per the partition plan of, rather than I usually don't say proposed, I usually use the word imposition by the United Nations Security Council resolution on the two-state solution of Palestine conflict at that time. Because no Arab state, no other Arab government, neither the local Palestinians were involved in that process. So it was one-sided, colonial, legacy-oriented Western imposition on the solution, so-called solution of that territory. So, as per the partition plan, 55% territory of the Palestine was given to Jews of that time. So Jews were only 33% in Palestine, and they only hold 7% territory. So, but the 55% territory was given to Jew state, and the other Arab state was given 45% territory. And due to which the locals, actually the Palestinians, ended up into civil war, and in 1947 this resolution came. In 1948, when Israel declared its independence, so Arab countries also involved into formal military confrontation with Israel. So as a result, regardless of getting back that 55% which was given by the United Nations as a part of the resolution, Israel was able to occupy 78% territory. So the territory which was supposed to be given to, the Jewish state was 55%, and the 45% included West Bank, Gaza Strip, and that was the territory which was given to Palestine, and the Jerusalem was actually as per the resolution, it was supposed to be monitored and governed by international community.
Right.
So after that, this conflict remained volatile. In 1967, we saw that another war ended up in Middle East on Palestine-Israel conflict, and regardless of getting more territory, the problem was that astonishing facts came that even the West Bank was again occupied by Palestine. The Gaza Strip was occupied by Israel, and even Egypt lost Sinai Peninsula, and Syria lost Golan Heights. So regardless of gaining that territory back from Israel, their own territories were given back. That was a time when the Muslim Ummah was, regardless of fighting for the Palestinian cause, rather than they were negotiating their own territories.
Right.
Like in 1978, there is Camp David Accords. As part of that accord, the Sinai Peninsula was given back to Egypt, and Egypt recognized the reality, Israel as a reality. And after that, in Oslo Accords of 1993 and 1995, we have seen that Israel has worked along with the Palestinian Liberation Organization of the Yasser Arafat at that time, and they arranged in the West Bank 3 areas: Area A, Area B, and then Area C. So Area B was given to the Palestinian Self-Governed Authority, and Area C remained with Israel for certain limited security and other administrative protocols.
But
and
coming back to his question, because time is
yeah,
short,
so I want to say that.
Solution?
Yeah, thank you. I want to just say that it was a wrong decision, first of all, to to just give unjust and illegal expansion to Israel. So from the very first step, if something which is wrong, so justifying that the remaining dialogues, discussions, deliberation on that conflict would be a kind of justification. So whatever is conflict before us, that conflict is actually out of the way scenario. You have your own home, you have your own land, you have your own property. Your property and land has been taken away, and at the end you have been told that let's come and bargain at your home. So you have to understand legally, morally, and ideologically that Palestine conflict is an imposition by the international community, and it has been sustained by the United States of America at multiple times by military means, that Israel's expansion has been supported and sustained. So as a result, there is no solution for that,
no solution,
unless you agree that oppression at once is oppression, but if it is sustained for a longer period of time, it becomes a reality.
Right.
So
we'll take a second question for Mufti Imtiaz Hussain. Please go on.
Assalamu alaikum. Myself Ahmed Ali Tariq. I'm from Bahria University, Islamabad. As they have talked about the US intervention in the Middle East, I have a question here. How could Middle East and Gaza could be a challenge for America's dying dominancy?
A challenge for the US?
America's dying dominancy.
Right. Mufti Imtiaz.
Okay, when we are talking about the US intervention with whether it is the Palestine, whether it is the Ukraine, or whether it is the China or any other country, when we are talking about US, it has almost every time the very controversial opinion regarding the intervention about the other countries. Because when we talk about the Palestine, it stands with the Israel, and if we talk about Russia and Ukraine, it stands with the Ukraine, because US has its benefits. But the problem is this: how can we solve this? There are two solutions. As a Ummah, we have to pay our responsibilities, and being a youth, we should teach our youth that, to educate them that what are our rights and what are the responsibilities if we are not fulfilling our responsibilities. So the other countries and the other person will obviously attack on him, and they will rule over us. And this is the very nature of this world. And if we are paying our duties, and if we are paying our task, obviously there could be no one who will come over us. Because this is the very simple rule of this world, that a person who is doing his whose duty, that will be counted as a live or active man. If a person is not doing or fulfilling his duty, he will be counted as a dead man. Actually, physically we are being counted as a living being, but actually we are not playing our responsibility in this world.
Welcome back to Suno Tonight with Saadia Afzaal. We are discussing today how the United States is trying to stabilize its declining hegemony. Yes, third question for Ms. Saima.
My name is Sheikh Isham. My question is, why Yahya Sinwar has been elected as the new president of Hamas, and what will be his influence in this current situation?
Yahya Sinwar.
Yahya Sinwar is actually leading the military aspect of the Hamas efforts in Gaza Strip. There are so many other important actors as well, and at a time when Ismail Haniyeh has been assassinated in Iran, so as a normal understanding, it was expected to be believed that Yahya Sinwar would be the right person to lead that ongoing military response in Gaza Strip. That's a normal calculation out there. There's no strategic reason to elect him or select him as a president of Hamas.
He has always been top tier leadership.
These are non-state actors,
Yeah,
and we cannot say why they are particularly elected. So I think that's a controversial question.
Right.
This is their internal decision.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sabi. I am a student of Bahria University. My question is, why do Muslim nations, especially Arab countries, toe the American and Israeli agenda? Why can't these countries follow their own independent policies?
Right. Ms. Saima.
We can say, and I have already mentioned that back in 1970, the discussion about the petrol and how America got involved in the Middle East, and then the Israel element is also very relevant. That's one of the most important ally of America. He's talking about why the Middle Eastern countries cannot follow their independent foreign policies. First reason may be their dependence on America for the sake of technology, for the sake of strategic aid they are getting from America. You can see that Saudi Arabia is one of the leading buyer of American armaments and weapons, and also other countries. So this is the reason. Also, America is offering funds and developmental funds and grants, etc., to these countries. This is the second reason. Thirdly, if we see, the Middle Eastern countries have internal rift within them. As Mufti has mentioned, that Muslims are not at one page.
Yeah.
So they will be leaning towards the incentive they will be getting, whether it's from the side of America, whether China, as I have already mentioned, that China and Russia are also more important actors in Middle East. So I think this is the reason their dependence on these greater powers are not letting them have their own independent foreign policies. That's the main reason.
Right, dependence.
Well, I just have one advice for the students of international relations, particularly. Whenever you are going to evaluate behavior of great power or superpowers, don't usually believe on things which are for public consumption, or for political consumption. You have to deal the behaviors of great powers within the statecraft. Statecraft is an ambit where geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geostrategic priorities are nurtured. So how many states in the world are capable of calling themselves they have a statecraft? So if there is an issue has been dealt by state A, B, C, whatever, and they are not qualifying to retain a kind of statecraft with them. So whatever they're dealing with, there will be no results. It will be only just symbolic efforts, to consume public, sentiments and to bring them closer to a kind of elite politics. But as a reality, there will be no mechanism to compete or confront those counter interests. So United States of America operates within the statecraft, you know, or any other great power. If you refer towards Russia, you refer towards, you know, China, or any other veto power, they operate within the ambit of statecraft. So within international relations, that particular understanding is very important to evaluate any political event or issue or phenomena at the international level. So issues do come, we are not united, I understand that. No one is united, we are humans. Humans have difference of opinion, but that is not needed at the geopolitical understanding. If states have political understanding, fine. For example, you want to buy something from one shop, if you are unable to buy, you can go many other in the market. But at the global level, the markets are very much confined. We have to be very careful to competitive in nature.
Point well taken. On this note, we're going to wind up. We're running out of time. Thank you very much, Dr. Tawqir Hussain Sargana, Ms. Saima Gul Rajput, and Mufti Imtiaz Hussain from Karachi for joining us. That's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Good night and Allah Hafiz.